Deep in the belly of America's most lethal warship, the Navy burns through a staggering $65,000 every single day, processing over 1 million pounds of raw cargo every week just to keep its youngest, lowest-ranking sailors from total physical collapse. How exactly does a floating steel fortress secretly transform this massive mountain of raw inventory into explosive human energy without a single catastrophic failure? Let's descend into the pressurized combat galleys to uncover the most extreme logistical operation on the planet right now, in this precise 0.001 fraction of a second. A staggering biological furnace is burning deep inside the 104,000-ton steel hull of America's supercarriers. Exactly 899 of the lowest-ranking sailors, the E-1 seaman recruits to E-3 airmen, are physically breaking their bodies to project global dominance across a 200 nautical mile radius. To prevent total physiological collapse in this brutal steel environment, the ship's galleys must synthesize exactly 4,357 high-density meals within a strict 24-hour cycle. That translates to an absolutely jaw-dropping figure of 4.85 heavy meals per junior sailor, every single day, just to keep their resting heart rates stabilized. The contrast aboard this $13 billion floating fortress is violently extreme. Up on the 4.5-acre flight deck, aviators pilot $70.5 million F-18 Super Hornets, achieving Mach 1.8 intercepts under bone-crushing 7.5 G turns, down in the blindingly loud 140 decibel and 130-degree Fahrenheit hangar bays. 19-year-old recruits making barely $2,139 a month provide the raw, explosive muscle that arms those aircraft. They manually wrestle 500-pound Mk-82 unguided bombs and drag 120-pound steel tie-down chains to secure 32 100-pound strike fighters against violent pitch-4 ocean swells. This is the bleeding edge of human endurance, completely stripped of all Hollywood glamour. These junior sailors execute punishing 16.5-hour shifts in the V1 and G1 divisions, logging over 25,000 steps on the steel decking and burning an astronomical 5,200 calories daily. They drag 150-pound, heavily pressurized hoses, pumping JP5 aviation fuel at a terrifying 1,000 gallons per minute under 150 psi across blistering 110-degree non-skid tarmac. The United States naval doctrine dictates an absolute, unyielding truth. Steel ships require iron sailors, and iron sailors require 3.2 million massive, uninterrupted calories for chemical refueling. Producing 4,357 meals for this specific demographic is a terrifying logistical war fought inside the tightly confined 2,500 square foot advanced conglomerate galley system. Culinary specialists operating under immense pressure, weaponized food to repair microscopic torn muscle fibers and sustain hyper-alertness. They operate 12 massive 80-gallon steam-jacketed kettles running at a lethal 45 pounds per square inch to flash boil 450 pounds of pasta for hundreds of hungry recruits. Industrial-grade Hobart mixers, rotating with 300 revolutions per minute of lethal torque, churn out 60 pounds of dense, carbohydrate-loaded dough every 12.5 minutes. These 899 lowest-ranking sailors are absolutely not consuming delicate, low-calorie civilian plates during their rush 15-minute breaks. They ingest heavily engineered, calorically dense payloads averaging 1,100 calories per sitting, designed for maximum human energy synthesis. We are talking about 1,850 pounds of lean chicken breasts, 900 pounds of complex carbohydrates, and 450 gallons of electrolyte-rich fluids processed with terrifying military precision. It is a strict biological imperative dictated by the unforgiving reality of sustained 9-month combat operations in the contested waters of the Indo-Pacific. When the deafening 115 decibel general quarters alarm blares at 0200 hours, physical exhaustion is completely unacceptable. These young E-1 to E-3 sailors are the first line of defense against catastrophic 2,000-degree Fahrenheit class Bravo fuel fires or devastating hull breaches. Their muscles, heavily fueled by this relentless underground food production, must react with explosive, life-saving kinetic energy within a strict 120-second response window. Therefore, the galleys remain active constantly, pushing out exactly 1,250 critical midnight rations, known as mid-rats, to keep the night check crews violently focused and combat ready. This subterranean industrial ballet is the single most critical vulnerability of American naval supremacy. A Nimitz-class carrier's twin A4W nuclear reactors can generate 550 thermal megawatts for limitless propulsion and superheated steam for 20 consecutive years.
Yet, the organic breathing machinery of its junior enlisted crew demands uninterrupted chemical refueling every single 4 hours to prevent critical cognitive decline. If the galleys fail, the world's most lethal 1,092-foot warship transforms into a defenseless target in under 48 hours. But feeding exactly 899 violently active junior sailors requires vastly more effort than dropping food into a pot. The logistics of loading, storing in 50,000 cubic feet of refrigeration, and cooking 4,357 meals in a confined combat zone defy all standard logic. How do they execute this impossible daily math while floating in a 15,000-foot deep, hostile ocean? The shocking science behind their ultimate survival begins right here and right now. Before a single burner ignites, the raw materials must conquer the most dangerous logistical maneuver in modern naval warfare.
It is called the Underway Replenishment, or UNREP, a high-stakes ballet involving two massive vessels steaming parallel at exactly 15 knots, separated by a mere 180 feet of churning, violent ocean. A military Sea Lift Command supply ship fires over high-tension steel cables. Across this precarious mechanical bridge, up to 450 heavy pallets of raw provisions are transferred directly over the unforgiving deep blue. Simultaneously, the airspace above transforms into a chaotic, perfectly synchronized tactical drop zone. MH-60S, Nighthawk helicopters execute vertical replenishment, or VERT-REP, hauling swinging 3,000-pound cargo nets of frozen meats and heavy dry goods. They hover just 40 feet above the carrier's pitching flight deck, combating vicious crosswinds and intense rotor wash to deliver their payloads. A single catastrophic miscalculation by the pilots or the flight deck rigging crews could send months of vital caloric fuel plunging into the deep abyss. Once the massive pallets strike the steel deck, the grueling biological tax falls squarely back onto our 899 junior sailors. They instantly form heavy, synchronized working parties, transforming into an unstoppable human conveyor belt extending deep into the ship's bowels. Within a suffocating 3-hour window, these young men and women physically manhandle over 1,250 pounds of raw, unyielding cargo. They pass heavy 50-pound boxes of frozen beef and 40-pound sacks of flour down painfully steep ladder wells, fighting physical exhaustion every single step. This colossal inventory cannot be simply stacked in a hallway. It must descend 7 decks down to the ship's reinforced storerooms. These subterranean vaults are true engineering marvels, divided into 50,000 cubic feet of highly regulated, tightly sealed climate zones. The frozen protein payload is secured in massive freeze boxes maintained at a bone-chilling -5 degrees Fahrenheit.
Stepping into these steel-walled freezers immediately after sweating on the humid 110-degree flight deck creates a brutal, violent shock to the human respiratory system. Inside these frozen vaults sits the raw ammunition required to sustain the strike group's highly lethal operational tempo. A standard 14-day unresupplied combat loadout includes 15 400 pounds of ground beef, 8 200 pounds of bacon, and 12,000 dozen whole eggs. Every single box is meticulously logged, tracked, and securely lashed down with heavy cargo straps to prevent catastrophic shifting during aggressive maneuvers. If the supercarrier must suddenly execute a hard 30-degree tactical turn, unsecured cargo could instantly crush a junior sailor pinned against a steel bulkhead. Managing this colossal stockpile requires a strict adherence to naval logistical doctrine, operating under the unforgiving first in, first out handling protocol.
Supply division officers, commanding specialized teams of junior logistics specialists, execute daily, microscopic inspections of the entire organic food inventory. A single overlooked pallet of expiring dairy or compromised poultry could trigger a massive ship-wide biological hazard within a few hours. Wiping out the combat effectiveness of 899 junior sailors with a localized foodborne pathogen is a catastrophic strategic failure the United States Navy simply will not tolerate. This subterranean fortress of food is not merely about physical survival. It serves as vital psychological armor for the youngest crew members. Hidden among the giant pallets of bulk protein are 4,500 pounds of premium roasted coffee and 18,500 individually wrapped chocolate chip cookies. For an 18-year-old seaman recruit deployed 8,000 miles away from their family, a warm cookie is a powerful, calculated dose of civilian comfort. It is a highly engineered morale multiplier, strategically deployed by command to counteract the crushing mental isolation of a 9-month forward combat deployment. Extracting this food for the massive daily feeding quota triggers a dangerous operation known as the Breakout, initiating in the pitch black of the early morning. The junior culinary specialists descend into the freezing vaults, battling the severe temperature drop to retrieve the exact raw tonnage required. They physically drag 1,850 pounds of solid, frozen provisions back up the steep ladder wells using raw, grueling kinetic lifting force. This massive payload is then transferred into the specialized thawing prep rooms, beginning a highly controlled, chronologically precise chemical transition. The raw materials have safely survived the perilous transfer and the brutal descent into the armored freezers, but staging frozen ingredients is completely useless to a starving crew.
What happens when this massive payload hits the searing heat, crossing the threshold into the main conglomerate galley, is like stepping inside a violently active industrial turbine. The ambient temperature hovers at a suffocating 115 degrees Fahrenheit, saturated with the thick humidity of boiling starches. This 3,000 square foot combat kitchen is constructed from heavy gauge stainless steel, built to withstand decades of violent physical abuse. The floor plan is a strictly optimized military grid engineered for relentless mass production. Every square inch of this deck is heavily monitored by senior culinary specialists directing the chaos. The backbone of this thermal assault relies on heavily militarized, programmable combi ovens. These are 500-degree digital combustion chambers capable of injecting precise bursts of superheated steam into the cooking environment.
A single specialist can load 350 pounds of raw, bone-in chicken thighs into one unit, tap an armored touchscreen, and walk away. The onboard computer calculates the exact humidity and thermal profile required to perfectly roast the protein to an internal temperature of 165 degrees. This automated precision eliminates human error, guaranteeing perfectly cooked payloads for the junior deck crews. Executing this high-tech culinary science becomes terrifyingly complex when the entire kitchen is violently pitching and rolling to prevent catastrophic, disfiguring burns from airborne boiling oil. The deep fryers are engineered with heavy internal baffles and locking storm lids. Massive 40-gallon stock pots are physically bolted to the stovetops using heavy steel sea rails. Cooking on an active warship means simultaneously fighting the raw ingredients and the unpredictable, violent physics of the open ocean. While the ovens handle the primary proteins, the carbohydrate payload is generated inside a terrifying arsenal of steam-jacketed kettles, pumping high-pressure steam at 45 pounds per square inch through double-walled drums. These kettles boil 80 gallons of water in under 6 minutes. It is a highly dangerous, brutally efficient method of mass producing the heavy starches required to sustain muscular endurance. The culinary team uses these pressurized cauldrons to synthesize hundreds of pounds of macaroni, heavy gravies, and nutrient-dense stews simultaneously. A single ruptured valve on one of these kettles could instantly fill the galley with lethal 300-degree vapor. Simultaneously, the ship's dedicated bake shop executes a completely different, highly sensitive chemical operation, Producing fresh bread requires conquering the constant, low-frequency vibrations generated by the 4 massive bronze propellers spinning just decks below.
These heavy mechanical vibrations can easily collapse sensitive dough during the critical proofing phase. To counter this, bakers operate specialized proofing cabinets with isolated shock mounts, maintaining a perfectly controlled 95-degree microclimate. They feed 150-pound batches of raw flour into industrial Hobart mixers, churning out 800 loaves of dense, calorie-packed bread every single morning. Operating this lethal machinery requires a rigid, unforgiving chain of command, extending down to the newest recruits. Chief Petty Officers, acting as the ultimate kitchen warlords, bark highly specific orders over the deafening roar of the ventilation systems. They direct teams of 19-year-old culinary specialists who wield massive stainless steel paddles like medieval weapons to stir the boiling cauldrons. There is zero room for civilian kitchen drama in this environment.
It is a strictly disciplined, highly synchronized military operation where a single missed timeline means hundreds of exhausted mechanics go hungry. As the digital clocks violently tick down towards service time, the ultimate logistical hurdle materializes thermal preservation. You cannot simply cook thousands of pounds of food and let it sit on a counter. The military enforces a 4-hour microbiological danger zone protocol to prevent catastrophic ship-wide food poisoning. To conquer this, the freshly cooked payloads are instantly transferred into heavy, highly insulated Cambro holding cabinets. These armored hotboxes maintain a precise internal temperature of 150 degrees, keeping the proteins flawlessly safe while the galley prepares for the impending human wave. The massive stainless steel serving lines are aggressively scrubbed down and fully loaded with perfectly organized metal inserts.
The heavy steam wells are fired up, projecting a dense wall of humid heat against the waiting servers. Every single ounce of the heavily engineered, calorically dense fuel has been successfully cooked, secured, and strategically positioned for maximum rapid distribution. The heavy steel watertight doors separating the mess decks from the narrow passageways remain tightly sealed, holding back the mounting physical pressure of the starving masses. But unleashing this massive payload into the hands of an exhausted, highly aggressive junior enlisted crew triggers a completely different psychological battlefield. When the heavy steel hatches finally disengage, a massive human tidal wave floods the aft mess decks of the supercarrier. Exactly 899 exhausted junior personnel, covered in toxic JP-5 aviation fuel and corrosive Pacific salt spray, surge aggressively toward the serving lines.
They are operating on dangerously low biological fumes, their bodies practically shaking from severe caloric deficits after grueling 16.5-hour operational shifts. The culinary specialists brace themselves, rapidly deploying heavy stainless steel serving utensils with extreme military precision to distribute the critical payload. Make no mistake, this is absolutely not a relaxed civilian dining experience. It is a highly aggressive, tactical refueling operation. Each junior sailor is granted a strictly enforced 15-minute operational window to consume their heavy 1,200-calorie plate before sprinting back to the blinding flight deck. They shovel down massive quantities of roasted chicken and heavy starches with terrifying speed, maximizing rapid chemical absorption. The 3,500 square foot mess deck instantly becomes a deafening echo chamber of clanking metal trays, roaring ventilation fans, and urgent tactical conversations.
This rapid consumption triggers an immediate, highly complex biological rebuild sequence within their battered 19-year-old frames. The 65 grams of dense protein per meal immediately attack the microscopic muscle tears caused by hauling 120-pound steel tied-down chains across the non-skid tarmac. Simultaneously, a massive influx of 150 grams of complex carbohydrates violently spikes their depleted glycogen stores, restoring explosive kinetic energy. Without this precise, mathematically calculated chemical intervention, the sailors' bodies would literally begin cannibalizing their own muscle tissue within 72 hours of combat operations. Beneath the rigid, unforgiving military hierarchy, a fiercely unbreakable bond is forged directly across the stainless steel serving counters. the 19-year-old aviation ordnance man, responsible for locking highly explosive 1,000-pound GBU-32 warheads onto strike fighters, locks eyes with the 19-year-old culinary specialist. They mutually understand the crushing, suffocating weight of their respective environments deep within this 104,000-ton nuclear-powered steel leviathan. There is a profound, silent respect forged in bitter sweat, roaring jet exhaust, and the shared, brutal sacrifice of an isolated 9-month maritime deployment in the highly unforgiving, chaotic theater of modern naval warfare. High-quality sustenance operates as the ultimate, undisputed morale multiplier. A perfectly seasoned slice of prime rib or a warm, precisely baked cherry pie possesses the extraordinary power to instantly shatter crushing psychological isolation. It momentarily transports a deeply homesick seaman recruit 8,000 miles away from the hostile Philippine Sea, placing them directly back at their civilian kitchen table. This highly engineered culinary comfort is undeniably the most potent, battle-tested psychological armor the United States military issues to its frontline troops. We routinely measure American naval supremacy by the massive 1,000-pound destructive yield of precision-guided munitions or the minimal radar cross-section of stealth fighters. However, the absolute, undeniable foundation of that terrifying global lethality is built directly upon the iron will of the lowest-ranking enlisted personnel. If these exhausted young men and women physically break, the entire $13 billion carrier strike group instantly grinds to a devastating, catastrophic halt. The culinary specialists are not merely cooking. They are actively synthesizing the unstoppable, beating heart of global democratic defense. These junior cooks are the truly unsung, largely invisible architects of American maritime power projection. They wage a relentless subterranean war against physical fatigue, armed with massive 45 psi steam kettles, heavy steel spatulas, and fierce, unyielding patriotic dedication. Their grueling, 14-hour daily labor ensures that whenever the nation calls, the deck crews possess the explosive physical energy required to launch supersonic fighters within 120 seconds. They feed the raw muscle that arms the advanced jets, and in doing so, they directly and aggressively defend the boundaries of the free world. The next time you witness a massive supercarrier projecting unquestioned power across the globe, remember the incredibly dedicated junior sailors making it possible. Remember the staggering 4,357 hot meals generated deep below the waterline daily to keep those young heroes firmly in the fight. If this deep dive into the hidden mechanical heartbeat of American military excellence inspired you, execute your critical mission right now. Hit that crucial like button, subscribe to this channel, and join our tactical network for more unprecedented, high-fidelity military analysis.